Alrighty, so when you receive your BABF head unit inside the plastic satchel, you'll receive these bits and pieces right here for your installation. Now, I'll go through what these plugs are individually, and I'll also show you how they actually plug up to your head unit right here. So I'll open this up, plug up everything to the back shortly, and show you how everything is connected. So without further ado, let's go through these one by one. Now, as you can see right here, we have our GPS antenna. Now, next up onto the right hand side, we have the 4G antenna. Now, your Wi-Fi antenna is now inbuilt, so you can disregard, you don't need to stress about the Wi-Fi antenna. Now, next we have our factory radio adapter right there. So this will plug up to the head unit, and the opposite end will plug up to your factory radio antenna. One of the most key components in this kit is this one right here. This is your CAN bus module. That is what translates, one of the bits and pieces that translates all your car codes, such as your air conditioning controls, steering wheel controls, and factory controls to the head unit itself. Now, to the right hand side, so we'll start from the left here. Right here you have your aftermarket reversing camera input. To the right of that, we have one of our dual USB port 6-pin USB inputs. To the right of that, we have our single 4-pin USB output. As you know, we provide you with multiple USB outputs with the unit. One more to the right, we have the microphone, the aftermarket microphone, which will be plugging up to this RCA right here, the microphone RCA, the black 3.5mm jack one, and connecting up to the unit to provide you with crystal clear microphone quality. But last and definitely not least, right here we have the actual main power harness with all of its plug-ins. So the factory plug that goes to the factory side of the vehicle, and then the black plug on the opposite end for the head unit itself, plus all the plugs right here for the CAN bus and the module in the bottom right of the head unit, which I'll go through shortly. Okay, so right here I have the head unit. I'll be opening this up and showing you guys how everything those plugs all plug up to this, and all you need to do from there is simply place it into vehicle and plug up the main power harness plus the radio antenna, run your USB ports and microphone, and you're good to go. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do is one by one go through how everything plugs up to the unit, to the back, and how we can go about doing that. So let me just take off this foam that you'll receive with the head unit, place this aside. Now this right here, I'll show you, give me one moment. This is your bracket that holds your BCM plugs. Now you want to follow our installation video and make sure you attach this correctly. Today I'll just be showing you guys a quick demonstration on how everything plugs up to our version 4 BABF head unit. So let's take this out, just like that. Place this down, remove the lovely plastic cover. Right here is our factory grey color variant that matches the majority of the factory grey dashboards, as you can see, just like that. Now I know the angle's a little different, so I'll make sure I pop this just like that so you can see all the plugs and components, and I'll show you guys how everything plugs up to the back. Now, first things first, I'm going to be showing you guys how the actual main power harness plugs up to the back of the head unit. So what we want to do is simply undo the little clip that is holding it all around. So I have to clip up a little wire. Now that will loosen up all the plugs right there, and we can go about plugging everything up nice and securely. So first things first, you want to make sure you plug up the main power harness just like this, and plug it to the main power harness input right there. Voila. Now grab your flathead screwdriver, and the most safe thing, in order to make sure we don't have any issues in the future after installation, is to make sure everything is plugged up and securely plugged up to the back of the head unit by confirming with this flathead that everything is pinned and plugged with the clips, no problem. Now the next input I want to make sure that is plugged up nice and securely is our CAN bus plug. Now as you can see, this has a CAN bus plug plus our audio right and left out for any aftermarket speaker systems or anything along those lines. Now what we want to do is simply plug this up nice and firmly and safely right in the bottom right port. Make sure we don't damage this plug whatsoever, because this is one of the key components to making sure all your factory plugs and factory steering wheel controls, air conditioning controls and whatnot continue working in perfect harmony with the new head unit. Now everything is nice, securely plugged up. Again, flathead screwdriver or anything you have available, just to make sure the connections are nice and secure, just like that. Now this plug will be going to the bottom right port, just like that, as you can see. Now next up, to the right of that CAN bus plug-in, is our lovely 4-pin USB input. Now with this head unit, you'll receive a total of 3 USB inputs, which are all external right here. So I'll show you guys how those plug up to the head unit. Let's just undo this little wire there. Boom, done and dusted. Now I'll show you guys what this plugs into a little later, shortly, but just for now, plug up the 4-pin USB port plug right here. And now all that's left to do for your USB port to work is simply running this to the glove box or anywhere you're comfortable with. Again, with my flathead, I'm just going to make sure everything is plugged up securely, or else when I plug in a USB or a charger, it may not charge, or it may not give us the USB details if we don't have it plugged in, again, nice and securely. Now next up, we have our 6-pin USB input. Again, undo the cable that we have around it to hold it nice and organized, and this will loosen up, and you have a nice long cable to run under the head unit or in your passenger side glove box. And what we're going to do is, to the right of that plug-in, just simply plug it up just like that, and make sure, again, as I said before, use a flathead screwdriver to make sure everything is secured nicely in the head unit. And as you can see, this one's just clipping in now upon using the flathead. There we go, and that's in nice and firm, and that's not coming out whatsoever. Next plug we're going to do is the one to the right of that, which right here is our aftermarket reversing camera input. So if you have an aftermarket reversing camera, you can plug it up by simply using this aftermarket reversing camera input, whether you're using one of ours or you're using a different aftermarket reversing camera you've already ran. Our unit is quite fluidly compatible. So let's plug it up. There we go, that's plugged up, but again, flathead screwdriver just to make sure all connections are in. There we go, that wasn't in all the way. Now that I'm using a flathead, that is going in all the way, no problem. There we go, that is nice and secure, and it's not going to come loose or cause any problems with our aftermarket reversing cameras. Now, next plug from the top left right here is our RCA set. Now there's a lot of key components on this RCA set right here. This RCA holds your SIM card slot. This also holds your aftermarket microphone input as well, your 3.5mm jack, which I'll be going through shortly as well, don't stress. So what we want to do is just make sure we're going to plug this up nice, safely and securely right here. Now we've made the plug-in for this nice and firm because we want to make sure this never comes loose, because this has all your microphone, your aftermarket speaker system, your sub inputs, all this is connected to this, so that is why it's a little tougher to get in than the rest of the plugs, which I'm going to use a flathead nice and safely to not damage it. Make sure you use it nice and safely so you don't damage anything, and simply push it in right into place and make sure that this doesn't come loose whatsoever. There we go, perfect. You can hear the unit giving a little bit of resistance upon pushing this down. As I said, this is the most hardest one to get in, and that just makes sure this never comes loose upon your driving while going over a speed bump or anything like that, and that is in perfectly. But again, flathead screwdriver, gonna push it down just to make sure that it's not gonna come loose again for us. Perfect. Now next few inputs we have, I'm just gonna undo this part right here. You can remove these rubbers to reveal your inputs for your antennas. Now what we want to do before we go through with that is the microphone. Now this is the aftermarket clear quality surround sound cancelling microphone that we have available for version 4s and 3s as well, but specifically this one with the 3.5mm jack is for the version 4 specifically. So what we want to do is just this end right here is the microphone, so we want to run that through to where we're comfortable for the microphone to be placed. So I'll pop that aside, and what we want to do is attach the 3.5mm jack right here onto the RCA set's 3.5mm input. So let's just plug it up, perfect, just like that, nice and secure. Now some microphones may require additional cameras due to it just depends on your actual vehicle itself, not the head unit, depending on the draw of the power, and you might need an additional 5 volts, which can be taken from the 4-pin USB input by simply plugging the microphone's little 5-volt power cable to the 5-volt female input, male input we have on the 4-pin USB input, just like this. And once those two are plugged together, you are good to go. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and plug up our antennas. Then lastly, we'll plug up our CAN bus. Now, right here is, firstly, on the left hand side, we have our 4G antenna slot, just like that. As you can see right there, I have the CAN bus on the bottom left port, just to go over them again. Next to the CAN bus, we have the 4-pin USB plug. That is this one right here. Next to that, we have our 6-pin USB plug with 2 USB outputs, which is, I'll just pull this out because we did put the 5-volt power cable through that. I do apologize. And that will be right here. There we go. That's right there. Next to that, on the right hand side of the 6-pin USB port, you have your aftermarket reversing camera input right here, and on top of that is, on the top left port, is where your RCA set that has your 3.5mm jack input for your microphone plugs into there for your version 4 BABFs. Alrighty, so now we have the little inputs on the top, on the right here. So first things first, as you can see, they are all labeled and engraved on the top. Your Wi-Fi antenna is now inbuilt, so disregard that, that will work right off the bat. And we can go ahead and place our 4G antenna first. Now you want to make sure you run these 4G antennas and Wi-Fi antennas, 4G antennas and GPS antennas somewhere that it isn't being covered by any metals or anything along those lines, mostly on the dashboard if possible, just to make sure that you have a nice solid signal that won't cause any future problems when you're in, let's say, the country roads or anything along those lines. Now, let's go ahead and screw on the next one on the right hand side, which is the GPS antenna. Just like that. Now that will just screw on nice and tightly. You want to make sure there's no way of it unscrewing. Now you can use a double-sided tongue to basically secure it a lot tighter, but I'm just going to give it a very minimal twist just like that, and that is good to go for me. I'm happy with that. Next, right here we have our radio adapter. So on your factory radio side, you want to remove the adapter you want to remove that plug from the factory head unit, then plug it into the female end here. Then the male end from there will plug into the port on the back labeled A and T for antenna. And once we have that plugged up, we have a good secure radio connection, good to go for your factory radio systems. Now, the next thing we want to do, I'm going to flip this upside down. So as you can see, from the main power harness, we also have the CAN bus plugins. Additionally, we also have this plug for the bottom set of buttons that you have. You want to make sure this cable connects to the bottom right port. So I'll move all these cables aside so we can see it nice and clearly. So we want to make sure this cable right here, as I explained before, is plugged up nice and securely, ran through the right and or left, or obviously the left hand side, to this port right here, nice and comfortably and nice and safely. Now if this isn't plugged in, your buttons at the bottom of your fascia will not work, and we don't want that. We want to make sure all the buttons are working. We want to make sure all the features are there for you. So make sure you plug in this plug from the main power harness right here to that bottom left port, or else you won't have those buttons functioning whatsoever. Now, last but definitely not least, the most important and key component in this for your factory plugs is your CAN bus module. Now this is the CAN bus module for the BABFs. The right hand side will plug into this port right here. Now you just want to make sure this is plugged in very securely. You want to make sure there's no way this will ever come loose, so just give it a little tug after you plug it in. Small tug, don't give it too much pressure, you don't want to rip any cables out, but a small tug just like that, and push it in nice and securely, and grab the opposite end and do the same. So just plug it in nice and securely, just like that. Make sure you hear that click, that clip, okay? That means it's nice and clipped in properly, and it's nice and secure, and it's not going to be coming out whatsoever. So I am happy with that. Now all that is really left to do is put the BCM bracket that holds the BCM plugs on the bottom, screw them onto the two sides with the screws we provide you with the kits. Now once you have those screwed in, you just want to make sure you plug your BCM plugs from the right hand side to the left. The main power harness plug will simply plug into the factory power harness right there. You can disregard this plug right here if you haven't purchased our external AC controller option, and you additionally have your subwoofer male end right there, along with the female end for any aftermarket subs right here as well. Speaker outputs for any speaker systems there, which you can either plug into or tap into however you please, and your right and left speaker rear right and rear left speaker outputs right there, inputs right here as well. So yeah, outputs right there as well. So yes, as long as you have your BABF head unit plugged just just like this, with obviously the BCM plugs attached to the bottom for all the factory components. As per our installation videos, your version 4 head unit should be running absolutely perfectly. If you have any further questions or want me to go through anything else, please talk to our support team members and they can help you out with any questions you have. And last but not least, we also have the wiring diagram right there if you needed to manually tap in any of your speaker systems. But yes, to all the installers, we do have that right there, good for you to go. Hopefully everyone's having a lovely day. This one's ready to go in a car and just attach the BCM plugs in. That is just a quick demonstration of how to plug up all the plugs on the VABF version 4. Hopefully, and take care.